Welcome to Module 5, the math one. Are you nervous? Is this the area that makes you the most overwhelmed and anxious about homeschooling your child? If so, you are not alone. So here's the thing. A lot of parents for the last 5 to 10 years have been asking, why did math have to change? Why is it so complicated now? Why can't our kids learn math the same way we did? And here's the answer. Didn't we just say that most parents are very anxious and overwhelmed when they think about teaching their child math? The truth is, math education in this country has been a complete mess since the beginning of time. As adults, most of us are not confident in math. We don't feel good about our math skills. We're not able to explain the things that we know how to do because we learn them through rote memorization instead of actual conceptual understanding. So, it was necessary for math to get a complete rehaul, and I am completely on board with teaching our kids a deeper understanding. And if that means some extra steps and parents feeling a little confused, so be it. So I'm going to help you uncover what's going on in math today so that you feel more confident. And let me just tell you that again, as a teacher of elementary school for 20 years, I didn't start off confident in math. I didn't like teaching it either. Here's a secret. Most elementary school teachers don't like math. Think about it. Most elementary school teachers are women who love to read and write and practice being in school for most of their life. When they grew up, they became a teacher. Not exactly a recipe for mathematicians or scientists. So the truth is that most of us in elementary school are relying on textbooks and workbooks to tell us how to teach our kids math. It's the same thing I see parents replicating again and again on these homeschool news feeds. Don't do it. It's not the way that meaning is going to be made. It's not authentic, and it's going to bore your children to death. What it's going to do is raise a whole nother group of kids who grow up to be adults who hate math and are scared of it. We can do better by our kids, I promise. Not every child will have a strong auditory or sight memory, so simply drilling flashcards to learn addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division facts will not be a successful strategy for all. And yes, many kids have a great memory. They're young. It hasn't been clouded up with tons of info yet. But still, our kids who memorize the facts without really understanding what they are doing get to middle school and begin to falter. And by high school geometry, they're a mess. Because what happens in school is the math keeps progressing and building. So in a classical education, they propose that we fill our kids' brains with a catalog of facts for them to memorize. And in the middle years, we revisit all that and begin to conceptualize it during the logic phase. But in schools, they don't revisit. They keep going. So our kids are left far behind. And here's the thing about memory. Yes, even though most kids have plenty of room in their brain to memorize these facts, interest and attention are the two greatest factors impacting whether they will store this info in short-term and long-term memory. So if your kid is not highly motivated to memorize these facts, it's not getting stored. Or if they're not attending during math. And I have seen kids in my 20 years who want to know the answers and therefore seem highly motivated, but memorizing for them is simply harder than the others, and it takes many more exposures. There has been brain research looking at the hippocampus to try and identify these differences. But all we need to know is that memorizing is not a solid strategy for all kids. And even when they do memorize, they usually don't understand. Montessori, along with many other educational methods, discourage rote learning and instead focus on using manipulatives to make concrete connections with the abstract thinking that comes with the symbols that numbers represent. The Common Core standards that have been implemented in American public schools, though difficult for some of us older parents to understand, are actually in line with the anti-rote learning movement. Waldorf, Montessori, Charlotte Mason, though this one can be argued, and Reggio are 4 educational methods that are also anti-rote. Remember what I said about elementary teachers not usually being known for their math skills? Well, high school teachers are, but their training was all in math and not in teaching practices or child development. So now kids who memorize facts get up to high school geometry and they suddenly need to employ highly conceptualized thinking to apply formulas, and they fall apart. The teachers are excellent in math, but don't know how to help these kids learn it or how to fill in the gaps that they've come up with. And here's where we see a great disconnect. I myself scored A's throughout math and other subjects in elementary and even middle school algebra, where it was still fairly simple, mostly relying on multiplication. But then I hit geometry in 10th grade, and it was like someone was showing me Chinese. I should have failed the class, but was given a D to push me through. because my story was not uncommon and they couldn't fail every kid. When I got to college, I had to take a placement test. And even though I scored in the top quarter of a very large graduating high school class and had a 91 GPA, I did poorly enough on the placement test that I had to take a not-for-credit remedial math class. I still struggled with it. When I talked to a mother recently of a former student I had in kindergarten, he actually had gone on to become the valedictorian of high school. And I found out that he also needed remedial math when he got to college. I knew that this problem was not just weak skills on my part, but a bigger issue with math instruction. So I know you're homeschooling and might be asking why I'm painting a picture of all the problems with school math. And the reason is because I know most homeschoolers are relying on the same textbook companies to teach their kids math that the elementary schools are using. We need to do better for our kids. No wonder why so many dread math. Listen to the terminology frequently used by teachers and parents. It sounds miserable, and it is. I have heard many teachers and parents use these phrases interchangeably and with conviction. I can tell you from experience, this is not the way to turn around our nation's problem with math. For those of you who don't know, Math Minutes is when you present that sheet of like 100 problems, and it's usually associated with multiplication, but it can also be used in addition or any other operation. You set a timer for 1 minute, then collect and grade the children's papers, and kids advance to harder problems when they get them all right. The number of problems or how many are needed to be correct can vary, but regardless, this is an anxiety-provoking and shaming technique that only benefits the kids who already know their facts and makes everyone else feel horrible. So yes, math totally needed to change, and let's embrace that change and do better for our kids. We can celebrate that our children will never sit in a classroom and have this attitude, and these teaching practices put on them, we won't let that happen. I'm going to break the next few lessons down according to the Common Core standards. Even if you are in another part of the world, many countries have moved towards national standards, and they are all very similar. So I mentioned before that when I started teaching, I also didn't like to teach math. What changed? Well, in my 20 years as a teacher, I realized that when I relied on workbooks and textbooks to teach my children math, it didn't go so well. So after a few years of doing this early on in my career and feeling like I was just hitting my head against a brick wall, I started to seek out professional development for myself. I started to look for my own learning so that I would get better at teaching math. I stumbled upon some really great resources that I share in my PDF support documents. And what happened was I took some conferences, I read some books, I did some of my own learning and professional growth, and I expanded my own math concepts. Once I did that, it was a breeze to look at the math standards and understand them and to know how to teach them to my child or back then it was my students, because I understood it and I was relearning it as an adult, so the process happened pretty quickly. It unfolded very fast. Trust me, it didn't take me the full 20 years to do it. Once I had that knowledge in my back pocket, it was easy for me to apply it. And it's easy for me to bring it to life with my daughter and to do very quick activities with her that focus and incorporate math skills that are going to tie in and build a foundation. You can do it too, I promise, and you don't have to rely on workbooks to do it. That's not going to be the best way to reach your child. Building your own capacity is going to be far more important.